We're in a yoga class. Now is the time to let your mind go blank and focus instead on how awesome the yoga teacher is. Look at me, I'm so good at yoga.
So first we just want to very quickly look at what is yoga. Yoga started over 5 millennia ago in South Asia. The literal Sanskrit translation of it means union. It's about the unification of the body, mind, and spirit. Initially, when people first started practicing yoga, their goals were to master the mind, control the emotions, and to grow spiritually. Today, yoga focuses a lot on the asanas, which are the stretches and the poses that you are probably familiar with, the breath practices, which is called the pranayama, and the meditation, which can range from the dharana and the dhyana. The concept of mindfulness is actually derived from the pillars of yoga. So just quickly to understand why we as clinicians should consider yoga when dealing with patients that have PTSD or have suffered trauma, we want to just do a quick review of understanding the effect that trauma has on the body. So first of all, when we're in danger, our autonomic nervous system, or the ANS, it signals to our bodies to prepare for that danger. But people who have PTSD, people who have been traumatized, their ability to differentiate between when they're actually in danger and what is just perceived as a threat or is it past danger can be impaired. So we want to kind of recalibrate the autonomic nervous system, and that can be triggered by breath, by movement, and through touch, which makes yoga an effective tool to kind of recalibrate that autonomic nervous system. So in addition to the ANS, both our limbic system and our reptilian brain also respond to that danger. They secrete hormones that trigger muscular and physiological responses. People that have PTSD or trauma survivors, often their bodies stay in this aroused state because it's continuing to defend them from a danger even though it has passed. So survivors of trauma usually feel unsafe in their bodies, but yoga allows them to reclaim that agency in their bodies and to establish an internal sense of safety. So also, a lot of trauma survivors experience psychic numbing, alexithymia, which is where they kind of fail to experience emotions, or some version of depersonalization. The lack of that mind-body connection can make learning to experience new emotions and sensations very distressing. So yoga helps individuals connect to those physical sensations and to connect those physical sensations to psychological events so that it eases the transition of reconnecting to themselves.
Trauma is about heartbreak and gut-wrenching feelings. It's not about thoughts. It really is about your body getting stuck in a state of sensations that are basically intolerable. So I've explored many different methods of dealing with trauma. I found that yoga has had the best reception. Yoga really helps people to really contain themselves and to safely experience their bodies. It makes it possible for people to feel things that they may be very afraid to feel. And so that's just really much of my attraction to yoga, is the understanding that when you get traumatized, you don't really want to feel what you feel and know what you know. And that really is part of it's very at the core of the problem. And then how yoga really makes it safe for you to experience yourself, even though what you experience may not be all that great. What's also important to know is, like, our research showed that a steady yoga practice for a traumatized person is more effective than any medication that anybody has studied. It doesn't mean that you should not be taking medications, but overall, statistically speaking, yoga in the long range has more beneficial effects than medications. But that doesn't mean that doing yoga is going to make you immediately feel better. What we find actually is that when people start doing yoga, starting to feel your body may bring up feelings of helplessness, terror, etc., etc. So part of what yoga can do for you, and having a good yoga teacher, is to help you, to give you the courage to begin to face your sensations.
How many health problems start as an attempt to cope with the unbearable physical pain of our emotions? The solution requires finding ways to help people alter the inner sensory landscape of their bodies. Bessel van der Kolk, The Body Keeps the Score. Complex trauma treatments should focus on restoring the control and power to the individual, empowering clients to have healthy relationships, helping clients reconnect with daily life, helping them gain physical self-awareness, nurturing a benevolent relationship with their bodies, and also, looking at treatments. CBT and EMDR have also been found to be very effective. However, there's often a high dropout rate with clients that have complex trauma. So when dealing with people with complex trauma, treatments also need to consider plans that the clients will stick with. Trauma-sensitive or informed yoga accomplishes all of these, and it also helps form mind-body connections. It helps clients develop somatic awareness. It uses breathing, body position, and also an awareness or mindfulness of the present moment, as well as the person's relationship to the environment. It's easily paired with traditional psychotherapies, and it's also experienced in a safe place and in a guided setting.
Experts say that virtually every person has experienced some degree of trauma in their lives. The impact of this trauma ranges from mild to truly life-shattering. Increasingly, therapists are turning to yoga for its remarkable effects on healing. Growing evidence shows that modified therapeutic yoga is an amazing tool for healing people who have experienced trauma. Trauma-sensitive yoga helps clients reduce stress, calm their mind, and increase sleep and body image. These outcomes have a profound effect on trauma survivors. Trauma-informed yoga. Where did it come from? The term trauma-sensitive yoga was first coined by David Emerson, founder and director of yoga services at the Trauma Center at the Justice Resource Institute in the US. Neuroscientists have shown that many areas of the brain affected by trauma are underactive in those who are traumatized. Those parts of the brain that allow us to feel in the moment tend to be disrupted. Sometimes people feel nothing, and sometimes flooded with feelings. However, brain scans have now shown that these brain regions became more active following a 20-week trauma yoga course. David found that trauma-sensitive yoga was vital in helping trauma survivors calm the mind and gain safety in their body through learning to tolerate physical sensations. It is not a style used in an ordinary studio, but rather a serious clinical intervention with extreme positive outcomes.
Small group of students now using yoga to help channel their emotions and cope with trauma and grief.
News Channel 9's Jennifer Sanders takes us to Meacham Elementary School for this week's Victory Over Violence.
Exercising our body, our mind, and our breath.
As soon as you enter this room at Meacham Elementary School, calmness and peace surround you.
Deep breath in, slow out, and breathe.
You might not see the trauma, but it doesn't mean the invisible scars don't exist. Many of them dealing with issues attached to higher levels of social, emotional needs.
There's just a lot of trauma, and like you said, there's so many layers of that, where I can just, anything I can do, like the smallest little thing I can do, if it's like a little breathing technique or just words I say to them to make them feel like they're safe.
And now she's using yoga to help empower kids like Carlos.
All right, Carlos is going to teach today.
What's your favorite part about the yoga class?
I like doing all the poses.
And tell me your favorite pose.
Well, the rock and roll pose.
We will rock you.
But he's not just learning poses. Trista teaches them about kindness, perseverance, and strength, showing them that sometimes the best lessons are outside of the classroom.
Some, however, have found strength in a specific type of yoga.
It's made me have hope. I found a lot, like within myself, that I didn't know was there.
Hope and gratitude, two things we certainly need these days.
I'm not just an addict, I'm a woman trying to make changes.
Christy Hill found that hope and the strength to overcome adversity in an unlikely place.
You can feel the energy, and it's so crazy. It's so good.
This is Madeline Johnson, Christy's roommate at the Southern Maine Reentry Center, a place where right now 72 women are living as they bridge the gap from incarceration to society.
I'm just grateful.
Surrounded by the kind of support
Totally grateful.
they never knew they needed. Like learning how to use something as simple as breath to cope with stress. Sea Change Yoga has been working with the Reentry Center for a few years now, and this is what classes used to look like. Like everyone else, they've had to adapt. With a mix of classes online and in person, they use what's called trauma-informed yoga.
It is a really invitational and empowering form of yoga.
Sky Adams is their teacher.
And this gives them something to really ground them in themselves and the skills that they need to self-regulate.
We aim to really slowly, gently, and in an invitational way offer opportunities for people to come back into their body in a place that feels really, really
And now
safe.
some veterans are finding help where you'd least expect it, inside a yoga studio.
It's a movement that is gaining momentum from nonprofit groups to the Veterans Administration health system. Yoga to help relieve symptoms of PTSD. One former Marine says it actually saved his life. Now he's made it his mission to help fellow vets one yoga posture at a time. As a captain in the Marine Corps, it was C.J. Keller's job to protect and support others. During the Iraq War, he was a member of a unit that provided security to convoys. He spent many days alongside Army units searching for homemade bombs. The work was stressful, to say the least.
There was a huge element of surprise when something would happen, whether that was an IED going off, explosion, followed up with gunfire and a gunfight, an ambush, complex attack.
Keller found the stress lingered, even after returning home from his deployment.
Anxiety, recurring thoughts that I would kind of get fixated on. Couldn't quite figure out how and why to break those habits and patterns. I was self-medicating a lot with alcohol and abusing that, which is really common.
But when a fellow Marine veteran introduced him to yoga, everything changed.
It was potent, it was different, it was very effective for alleviating my symptoms of anxiety and my stress, and it just felt like magic.
So as you can see from those news clips, there is a wide variety of patients and populations that can be helped by trauma-sensitive yoga, or TSY. Some of the studies that showed evidence of TSY being effective include one for women with chronic PTSD that hadn't been responding to other treatments, one for civilian and military women with PTSD, another for women with intimate partner violence. There's a transdiagnostic study that we looked at where there was really more so of a focus on the symptoms and less on the specific diagnosis. So people with PTSD, complex PTSD, ASD, and a few other diagnoses it was shown effective to help relieve their symptoms of stress and anxiety. As you saw in the news clips, it can help veterans, it can help incarcerated persons, it can help children who are going through developmental trauma or stress-inducing situations in their living environment. It's been proven effective to help with racial and ethnic-based trauma, as well as work-based trauma. So there's a really wide variety of people that can benefit from the use of TSY as a therapeutic intervention. The studies that we looked at showed a range of really positive results. I'm going to go over just a few here, but it's really cool to look at the various ways that TSY was able to help people who have suffered from trauma. Some of those include significantly reduced severity and intensity of symptoms, and also that they're able to sustain that reduction in symptoms. There's a greater connection to the body, thoughts, and feelings, which especially for those people with depersonalization or alexithymia is really great. There's been a healthier integration of traumatic experience into their life narrative, an increase of psychological flexibility and emotional regulation. They're noticing they have more gratitude, compassion, self-love, and they've been able to experience more feelings of calm centeredness instead of kind of that frazzled, aroused, and agitated state that is common with people who have PTSD, as well as a positive self-perception. And there's also been an increase, people do think of yoga as exercise, and even though that's not the point, it can impact a person and include increasing having like an active lifestyle, increased physical strength and mobility, and it also helps with the acceptance of their physical body.
What makes yoga trauma-sensitive yoga or trauma-informed yoga? The first main difference is that because people with trauma should not be touched without their permission, there are only verbal assists. Secondly, while mindfulness is important in all yoga practice, really stressing and teaching grounding techniques and exercises that can also be used in therapy is an important aspect. Similarly with breathing, of course, is done with all yoga, but there's a real focus on how to return to your breath as a coping strategy, how it can be used in daily life. Furthermore, the forms and positions themselves are flexible for each client. So there might be groups that you eliminate some forms with, or you definitely give options of different forms that they can be doing. In addition, there's a real sense of safety. There needs to be a real sense of safety in the yoga setting. So the instructor would not use any quick movements. There would be appropriate lighting and temperature. There would be, no loud sounds. All of those types of things are extremely important in trauma-sensitive yoga. Additionally, the qualities of the instructor themselves, again, they have to be very genuine, approachable people who care about their yogis. They have to be accepting and adaptable, positive. It's really important that they're open to feedback, because one of the techniques that's very important in working with people with trauma is that they feel heard and listened to, that they have a voice. So the instructor needs to be somebody that if somebody gives them feedback, that they act on it and that they're open to that. The instructor also, it's really important that they use invitatory language. So they don't say, okay, now do this position. They might say something like, when you're ready, this would be the next position to move to. Or they would frame it in words like that were very non-coercive. And again, they would give clients choices. So it's very important that choices are offered for each position, and that the clients are made aware of listening to their body, and the feedback that their body is giving them, pain or tension, are important things for them to listen to. Future research implications. Since TSY is a relatively new technique, a lot more research needs to be conducted to confirm it as an evidence-based therapy. For example, when the article that we read came out, only one study up to that point had been done, which was in 2014, that had looked at the roles of the different mechanisms of TSY and what make it effective. So for example, they looked at specifically breathing, the forms themselves, and mindfulness, and how each contribute to the reduction of PTSD symptoms. However, more research along those lines needs to be done, as well as evaluating TCY's effects on different groups. Those need to be conducted. Longitudinal studies, some studies have been done over some longer periods of time, but again, since this is a relatively new treatment, more longitudinal studies need to be done. And in fact, because of the lack of those longitudinal studies, counselors who are considering this technique need to inform clients of TSY's lack of longitudinal studies in the research. Also, how to encourage the continuation of the practice of TSY after therapy. So in other words, if they're finding it really effective, how can clients be encouraged to continue with their yoga practice on their own? And also research needs to be conducted on combining TSY with other types of psychotherapy.